There are so many amazing games that fall under the roguelike and roguelite genre, games that you can find yourself playing over and over again, hundreds of hours worth of content with endless replayability. The genre is truly something beautiful to see in gaming. Endless masterpieces like Hades, Enter the Gungeon, Binding of Isaac, Dead Cells, really, I could list highly regarded roguelites all day long. But with great masterpieces known by so many people, there's gonna be some games that fly under the radar, like really under the radar. As someone who creates content on the internet, I have a lot of developers reach out to me to play their games and create content on them. And I decided to try out a handful of games that some developers have been kind enough to send to me. So big shout out to them for sharing their work with me. They're not paying me, I just thought this would be a fun video, and I'm playing these games for the first time with this video. I'll have a link in the description on where you can buy all these games if you so choose. All right, so let's get into the first game, which is a game called Dungeon Wizards, which you can buy on Steam for $7. It's made by Tubby Turtle Studios, who's a solo indie developer based in Germany, and this is actually their first game. The interesting thing with Dungeon Wizards is that it's a match 3 type game, which is something you don't really see in roguelites. If you don't know what a match 3 game is, it's a puzzle game where you line up tiles to make the icons disappear if they all connect. It looks really simple, and overall it is really simple. You have different icons to line up, and lining up the icons have different results. Let's quickly talk about all the things on the screen. Firstly, you have gold, and after collecting X amount of gold, you unlock a relic, and relics give you buffs throughout your entire run, and you can see what each relic does at the bottom of the screen. Next, we have runes, which serve the same purpose as gold. You collect a certain amount, and after X amount of runes collected, you have a spell. Spells are items that help you in your turn and have a hefty cooldown. Some spells could turn all your gold into runes, they could sort all of your items on the screen, collect all the potions, really anything. But what's a potion? A potion heals you, and that's it. There's multiple potions though for XP, runes, gold, and losing health as well. Alright, now there's only 2 things left. They're pretty simple. You have swords, which would do damage to the skulls, which are enemies and bosses. The swords have 3 different colors, and the bosses could also have 3 different colors, with red, green, and blue. And each color is weak to one another or more defensive to one. Killing enemies will grant you XP, and every time you level up, you can choose to have coins or runes be worth more, choose to do more damage, have more health, have potions heal more, everything you can imagine. The game ends once you reach 0 health, as I don't know if there's an actual end game. Now for roguelite aspects, the game has different classes you choose from, and each class is stronger in their own way. One class can start the run doing more damage, another one has money be worth more automatically, and etc. Along with that, each class can level up and gains XP after each run is done, and with every class level, they gain new buffs permanently. Overall, the game is pretty fun and unique. I haven't fully unlocked every class, but the classes I do have unlocked are all pretty strong. But also, to be honest, I don't notice much difference with the classes besides the attack one where damage starts off stronger. Runs can take about 10 to 20 minutes and it has okay replayability, but I feel it can get tedious at times. I'd buy this game for $7, but don't see it getting hundreds of hours, or maybe past 50. But that's me. If you like match 3 type games, you'll probably really enjoy this. I personally would love to see this as a mobile game, as that's where match 3 games really strive, but a good opening game for this video. Alright, next game is an early access game, and it's called Holomento. Developed by Sean Weech and published by Deck 13, it entered early access on April 27th, 2022. It's a permadeath action RPG with some roguelike aspects related in there. I will say so far, this is the least roguelike game on the list, but I'm still going to briefly talk about it. You travel through the world of Eventide Hollow, which is filled with deadly enemies, treasures, relics, and towns that are run down and beat up, which is where the roguelike aspect comes in. In your runs, you can collect resources to help rebuild whatever town you're in. Rebuilding the town will give you additional item slots, cheaper shop prices, and even higher variety in items. This is the roguelike aspect, I'm pretty sure. And I still feel it hard to justify it in this video, but let's just rock it, okay? You can choose different areas to start your run in once you discover them, and even after completing your first run, you can unlock more characters, all with different specialties. The game so far has 6 characters total, and the developer is hard at work trying to make the game as good as it can be. Now, it's time for me to be honest. I didn't find myself having that good of a time playing. The world is beautiful, and the concept for the game is overall really fun. The rolling mechanic, which reminds me a bit of a Souls-like game, helps enhance the combat, but I still feel a lot is missing on top of a lot of bugs. I've randomly clipped through the floor and died, and on top of that, there's no jumping, which makes movement not as fun. Enemies seem to do little to no damage, and I personally never knew where to go when playing. The open world aspect of the game is nice, and I like the aesthetic, but having no map to help guide me is very annoying. The game was released into early access, but the game does not feel really good, and the roguelike aspect seems very minimal. But I do hope this game gets good updates, and if it does, I look forward to playing it and seeing the improvements. I just find it hard to justify $20 right now. Alright, this next game may be my favorite one from the list so far, and I only got to play a demo of it, and that's Remnants of the Rift. Developed by Bromeo, which is a small indie team in Spain. They've mostly made phone games, but do have one game on Steam, Switch, and PS Vita called Box Duck, which is inspired by the Punch-Out series. Their game Remnants of the Rift is a roguelike action tactics game where you play as a mercenary named Morgan who's exploring an alternate dimension named the Bast. You pause and plan your moves very frequently as you try to stay alive and explore as much as you can. The combat is all done on these platforms and you move your character Morgan around with the D-pad or control stick. During combat, you're defending your modular, which starts with 3 HP, and if it loses all of its health, your run is over. You can see where the enemies plan on going, and it's up to you to decide which enemies you want to take out first and how. You can have up to 4 abilities equipped at once, and before each run, you decide which abilities will be used. One run consists of going through multiple floors, and before each floor, you pick between 2 options on where you want to go. You can get a mod, which is just a buff for one of the abilities. You can get a super mod, or you can get prana or core, which are the 2 currencies, or you can go to 2 different shops. Prana, which I view as the main currency, can buy you extra health, or you can trade in your money to use outside of the run. And it also has cores, which is the other currency, which can be used in Juno's Forge if you want to upgrade your mods. That's the premise of inside a run with currencies and the abilities. Now, outside of the runs, you can buy new abilities, buy more mod slots for the abilities, or even upgrade your health. All these can be bought with the currencies you receive for trading in your prana in the middle of your runs. You can also get this currency by just doing the missions and clearing floors. At the start of every mission, it will tell you how much of this currency you get for clearing one floor, and each run has a handful of floors for you to get through. And I said I only got to play a demo of the game, and the demo took me about 2 hours to beat. But the demo also barely scratched the surface of how much the game actually has to offer. I ran into some bugs here and there where the game didn't know what to do if I died, but outside of that, the game felt really good. Combat reminded me of One Step from Eden with the movement and abilities. It was just a little bit easier being able to pause and plan my moves out more. There seems to be a lot of upgrades available as well for your character's ability and health, which can help keep runs fresh. The graphics are also very retro-y style, and menus remind me a bit of Persona. They're a little clunky here and there, but the game feels very good. According to Steam, the game is set to release in 2022, and this is definitely a game I'm going to keep my eye on. And if this game really interests you, I suggest you try the demo or even support their Kickstarter they have. Well, depending on when you watch this video, the Kickstarter may be over, but I hope the developers have nothing but success with this great gem. Seriously, try it out. Alright, next is a somewhat similar game with an isometric view of the battlefield, and it's Defend the Rook. Developed by 1UP Plus Studios, whose only other game published is a deck building roguelike named Dungeon Top, which had moderate success with a few hundred reviews on Steam. Defend the Rook was released October 26th, 2021 on Steam, and April 14th of 2022 on the Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure which version would be better. The controls on the Switch feel a little wonky at times, but the option of portability is there with the Switch if you don't have a Steam Deck like me. Okay, so what is this game? Well, it's a roguelike tactics combat with some tower defense elements where you defend your rook, and it has turn-based combat. You have 3 classes, all with 3 different unlocks available as you play the game more. Each class has 3 alternate classes to unlock, and along with the classes, you can have spells and towers to help you with each level in the run. The run has 5 levels total, with each level having a handful of waves. You can use your towers and spells once per level, and they each have their own health, and after every wave, you gain XP and gold based on the enemies you killed, and on top of that, you get a free upgrade to choose for one of your classes after every wave. Every level ends with a boss wave, and once the boss is defeated, you can spend your XP to unlock upgrades that last the entire run for your classes, and you can spend your gold on upgrading your turrets, traps, and even your rook. Game over happens once you beat the 5 levels or your rook dies. For added difficulty, the game has something called an Ascension mode, which just adds some level of difficulty enhancers to the run. Now, me personally, I've had some good fun with the game. Definitely makes me use my noggin with which character I should be upgrading and where I should be attacking or moving them around. The game has a good amount of upgrades for each character, and it seems like you can easily have some very overpowered runs, but the gameplay doesn't seem to change too much per run, even with different characters. I feel it can be hard to justify an $18 purchase, as you can feel bored after a run or two if you're not super into tactics game. But the initial first few runs can give you a good amount of fun, and every run has potential to last over an hour, so you'll be taking your time with these runs compared to the last game, Remnants of the Rift, where a run could take 10 minutes. Overall, Defend the Rook is fun. My biggest concern is replayability. I like the difficulty modifier, but I feel it doesn't help with the replayability all so much. But still, it's a good game to pick up, especially if you like tactics game, and you should try it out. Would definitely recommend it on sale, but I don't think there's a demo, sadly. Okay, this next one's very interesting, and it has a lot, and it somewhat reminds me of Darkest Dungeon, and that's Few Nights More. It's a turn-based RPG roguelike which released into early access on April 28th of 2022 and was developed by Turnabout, sorry if I said that incorrectly, who's a very small team according to their website, and Few Nights More is their first and only released game. In the game, you play as vampire lords who seek to conquer Lost Land, and in the process, you defend your castle of choice and design it with rooms, decorations, traps, and minions. You start with 4 vampires to choose from, and each vampire has their own start and perks, but they also have their own negative inflictions, and along with that, you can unlock 4 more characters currently. Your main goal is to survive all the nights in your castle of choice. It seems that the recording of this video, there's 4 castles total, but you only start with 1 unlocked. And as usual in roguelike games, if you die once, the run is over. Now, inside an actual run has a lot more to cover, and I will do my best to make it as understandable as possible. And if you don't understand it, I'm sorry, I tried my best. Okay, so in a run, you have your beat up castle, and during the night, you'll have multiple fights against enemies, and once the night is over and you've defeated all the waves of enemies, you can upgrade your castle and your character. First upgrade we'll cover is fame points. You earn fame points at the end of any night, and you can use them in 3 categories, which are seduction, terror, and prestige. Level in each category up will give you their own benefits at certain levels. Next, you can choose a perk after each night, which is just a simple buff you choose that will last the rest of your run. Next is another thing that lasts your entire run, which is a skill. You pick between 3 skills, which will be able to be used in combat. Some skills will require action points to use, and some will require blood. We'll get to that later. Next, you unlock trinkets, which are basically items you can use in bottles for buffs with a cooldown. Some have usage limits through the night, so you have to be careful with those. And after a night is done, you also sometimes will unlock a room to unlock for your castle, and every room gives you a starting bonus, and the more you level it up, the more benefits you see from it. Lastly, you also receive gold at the end of a night, which can be used at the store, which seems to spawn periodically. Ah, Jesus. Okay, you got all that? Good. Now it's time for combat. The combat is turn-based, and you play as whatever vampire you chose in the beginning, and you have 3 starting moves. You have 3 combat points, which usually equals 3 moves, but some moves may cost 1 combat point, and some moves may cost 2. You can get more combat points by raising your stamina with your perks, but you only get 1 perk per night, so you have to choose wisely. And do you remember how I said some skills cost blood? Well, some moves will raise your blood meter after you use them, and if a skill costs, let's say 50 blood, you won't be able to use it until you get 50 blood from other skills. But don't worry, it's pretty easy to fill. Alright, next let's talk about enemies. You'll know what moves the enemies are doing by hovering your mouse over them, and it can help you plan on how to defend from them. Enemies can heal, buff, and even give themselves armor as well as attack, of course. You need to watch out between which attacks will do physical damage and which ones will do magic damage, and try to block it accordingly. Okay, I'm sorry, this game kind of has a lot, and I tried my best. And now here's what I think. I think this game on paper and seeing it for the first time is very confusing. The tutorial didn't help me understand the game at all. I just learned as I went, and even now I probably don't know all that much, but the gameplay itself is fun and rewarding, and there's a good amount of content for a game in early access. If you're a fan of turn-based RPGs, especially Darkest Dungeon, I can justify the $20 price tag. The game is really young and has so much potential. Of course, being in early access will have some flaws, but the game overall ran well and was a good time. Very confusing at first trying to learn, but once I got over the initial learning curve, I found myself having a really good time and playing it like I would play Darkest Dungeon with my decision making. So big kudos to the development team behind this game, and thank you for sending me your game as well. All right, we got one more game left, and this next game gives me a lot of Enter the Gungeon vibes, and it's AK-xolotl? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a top-down action shooter roguelike where you travel through levels, gain power-ups, and upgrade your character before every run. It's being developed by Two Awesome Studio, which is an indie dev team located in the Netherlands and Spain. As of recording this, you can't play the game as the demo just ended, but the developers were kind enough to give me a demo key so I could try it out. Thanks, devs. Cool thing is you can still support the game on Steam by wishlisting it, or even supporting their Kickstarter, which as of recording this video is not out yet, but it seems the game will be released everywhere once it's out. Okay, so in this game you play as a cute little amphibian creature hunting down your next meals with whatever guns you find, and once you die you just regenerate and do it again. Inside of a run, you have your main primary weapon, which has unlimited ammo, and killed enemies have a chance to drop a gun or a band-aid. The guns have a limited amount of ammo, and the band-aids heal you. Most enemies also drop stakes, which seem to be some sort of currency to use outside of the run. You go through a handful of rooms until you reach a boss, and once a room is clear, you choose which path you want to go to next, and each path has a benefit. There were 3 paths to choose from when I played, which was 1, a gun, which just gives you a weapon, 2, a heart, which heals you, and a third was a lightning path, which gives you an item that acts as as a buff for the entire run. Personally, in my short playtime, the lightning seems the most reliable path if you can avoid taking a good amount of damage. I only got to play a small demo, which got me to the end of the first world, where I did get to fight a boss, which reminded me of Enter the Gungeon with the small bullet hell aspect and me needing to dive around projectiles they were throwing at me. The game overall felt really good in that run. But outside of a run, it seems where the roguelike aspects occur. None of these options were available in the demo, but in a quick glance, there is a gun shop, which seems to let you buy weapons, which will allow you to change your starting weapons. There's a recipe pot in the middle of the starting area that allows you to cook recipes, which then seem to turn into a permanent character buff. And there seems to be a bulldog by a vending machine. I'm not 100% sure what it does, but I assume it's a buff for an entire run based on the prices. Everything costs stakes, which you can easily acquire in the middle of a run, along with recipes costing what looks like spinach and salt as well. Really, I wish I could say more about the game, but I only got to play a small portion of it. But the game overall played really well, and it had a good feeling of Enter the Gungeon. My controller also didn't work when I was playing it, but still using a mouse and keyboard was fine. I'm very intrigued at what the game will do, and hope the Kickstarter has a successful launch. And of course, links for the Steam page and Kickstarter will be in the description. And that will do it. 6 roguelike games that you probably never heard of. Big thanks to all the developers of these games for sharing a key with me. Overall, the games felt pretty good. Some better than others, but I hope nothing but good success for all of these games. Links for everything will be in the description. Let me know in the comments which one you think looks the best from this list. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, also, sub if you enjoy the video. I work really hard on these videos and upload when I can, but I stream 5 to 6 days a week on Twitch if you ever want to watch me live. Okay, bye.